Zillion. Welcome to Breaking the Standard, where we are closing the communication and knowledge gap for the small business government contracting industry. I'm Aubrey Gainford, and today we have very special guest with us, Tan Wilson from Entellect. Tan, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. This is exciting. I've been wanting to do this for a while, so I'm glad we connected.
Yeah, me too. If you could just introduce yourself for our listeners, that would be great.
Sure. For those of you who don't follow me on LinkedIn, I'm Todd Wilson, president of Intellect. We're a boutique company. We do BD capture proposal support. Basically, what we're really specialized in is bid strategy. Anything that has to do with strategy. We win a number of recompetes. We're the go-to for if you want to in-seat an incumbent, if you want to retain your work. So we do quite a bit of that.
Awesome. And today, I am really fascinated about what we're going to talk about. We're going to be discussing why do we bid and what we bid on and the psychology behind the process and the tactics. So when I got to meet you and you were kind of walking me through how you look at proposals and making the decision behind it, I found this extremely fascinating. So um, can you just explain this from your perspective in GovCon and how you look at it versus how other people might look at it?
Yeah, so I think a lot of my colleagues talk about the mechanics and the tactics behind what we bid and why we should bid and where you should sell and what you should sell to the government. I've always looked at it from a very a personal, emotional perspective because emotions play a big role in how we make decisions. You can have the most objective set of frameworks. We can follow the Shipley approach. You can have a bid decision process in place, milestone reviews and gate reviews and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's people who are making these decisions. You make a decision within your organization, what you should bid, what opportunities you should pursue, who in the government you should sell to. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think sometimes when we talk about emotions, we kind of equate that with negative emotions, or you're being too emotional about things. But emotions are a whole wide range, a very broad spectrum from the excitement of pursuing new opportunities. I'm a hugely competitive person. And so for me, it's all about the chase, the thrill of the chase, the excitement of the chase, the new opportunities that kind of, are on the horizon. The other type of emotion too is like pride in your accomplishments. I think we need to take moments where we're, you know, enjoy and are proud of where we've come. And so we bid sometimes on the fact that we've been able to do this before. There's no reasons why we shouldn't be able to be successful in the future. The one emotion I think that gets way too much press, and I'm guilty of doing this too, is the FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. That can really impact your decision. And I think that's kind of where we stay and what kind of impacts us a lot on what we bid because we bid out of the fear of missing out. And realistically speaking, though, you can see the correlation between more experienced firms who are, very experienced. They have a lot of contracts. They have a lot of experience in bidding, some really tough opportunities. They tend to bid with greater confidence, obviously, than the newer, more immature, new to GovCon, where, they're not, the more experienced ones are not solely basing on their superior knowledge, but they've developed a higher level of comfort with the uncertainties of bidding. They've kind of embraced that. Um, on the flip side too is that a lot of times ego and bravado kind of fall into why and sometimes why you shouldn't bid, and that can really kind of impact that. And so with that level of confidence, you're a little bit too cocky, should I say. You kind of go into it, maybe underestimating what the government is really saying versus what you want to say. So there's always that tug and pull. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? And finding that healthy balance, I think, is really important. And unfortunately, for small businesses, you just have to bid more to get in the game, to be more confident and be more, accepting of a lot of these unknowns. But at the same time, really being deliberate, and that's a word that I use a lot in a lot of my speeches and my podcasts, is being very deliberate and making sure that you are pursuing things in a very strategic kind of way, that they're, very aligned with where you're going and where your organization should be.
I love that you link this to, the human form, because I think a lot of times, and even from what, you and I'm sure have both seen in this, a lot of it looks from strategic only, like, what could we profit from off of this? And, what's our chance of being able to win this versus like, why are we really doing this? And I think
Right.
that was something that you said to me when we got to chat before that really stuck with me. So when you sit
So
down
it's
with
not
your,
a so it's not a I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but
no,
it's
you're
not
fine.
a trade-off, right?
Right.
It's not trading the emotional intelligence for the analytical rigor or the analytical data intelligence for it. There's a balance and a culture that you need to kind of foster that values both.
Hmm. Okay. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Because then that might change the question I'm about to ask you. Because I guess I had it in my mind that, a lot of people either go all one way or maybe all the other. And what you're saying makes a lot of sense, but could you talk about it a little bit more? Because I think I had it as one or the other.
Yeah, and I don't think it has to be. I don't think it has to be one or the other. You can't separate like the one or the other.
Right.
But I think we focus a lot, and especially capture professionals with really good reasons. Is companies like G2, Orange Slices, GovWin, Delta, like GovTribe, all of these companies wouldn't exist if we didn't value the data. And
Mhm.
so there is a lot of credibility behind utilizing data in the most effective way, but then also balancing that out with the human aspect of it, right? Trust but verify the data. You have to have these conversations with the customer. You have to understand from the customer, why is it that they're putting out this opportunity? I think sometimes we don't ask the why, we just accept the fact that there's a requirement. And this is the agency, and this is what we've done before, and we hyper focus on the scope of work and the technical aspects of it. But there's a real mission need, though. There's a need from the end customer. There's a need from the government as to why they do that. What is their pain point? Understanding the customer's hot buttons and their pain points of the why is this requirement, on the streets, or is out to bid, is really important. So that's something that data can't always tell you.
Mhm.
And so you do have to have somewhat of a high EQ to be able to go out and have those kind of conversations. And so not every opportunity is won behind a computer screen.
Mm.
Sometimes you have to go out there and really kind of, press the flesh and understand, emotionally why some of the things are the way they are, and make those decisions based on that.
I'm really glad you clarified that for me. I guess in my mind, because of the way that you talk about, looking at it from the emotional side, not that data is not important, but I just think human interaction and the human decision part of it's so important that I guess I completely shoved the other part to the to the side. But um, like in working with your clients and looking at this entire process, what do you think drives their decision? Like if you're walking, with a client through something and, you're trying to teach them, like looking at it from both the why are we doing this? And then like how much information, like what do you think really drives their decision at the end of the day? Because I know that you're there to ultimately like advise them and suggest like this is where you could go, or this is what I see. But I
Yeah.
guess I'm just curious, like, what do you think drives that at the end of the day?
So I can tell you what I think should drive that versus what they think or say is
Right.
driving why so a lot of times customers come to me and say, we need you to help us with this contract, or penetrate this agency, or, whatever the business development or capture need might be. And so my perspective on that is, it's not about, yes, can you win? Sure. If you do the right things, maybe you'll win, maybe you won't. There's a whole bunch of other factors, and that's a whole other podcast in itself.
Mhm.
But to me, it's not about winning, so to speak. It's about maintaining sustainable growth, and and meeting the end customers needs and their mission, right? So like behind every contract, there's a mission need, there's a customer requirement. And so I try to coach our clients to kind of take a step back and kind of critically look at, what you can do versus what you want or should do. And sometimes those are misaligned. And so it's not always, an issue with our customers as to whether or not they can win the contract on their technical superiority or their capabilities or their past performance. A lot of times it's winning and knowing how well you're aligning your bids or your capabilities to the end customer's missions and values of the agencies to ensure that those two things are in alignment. And so you need to kind of critically assess, when you say like, what can we do versus what they want to do. Sometimes it's essentially understanding not only your operational capabilities, but whether or not these are aligned with your long-term strategic goals. I had a customer the other day say, "Oh, well, like we're going to recompete or we're going to rebid this thing," even though, and that's when I start to listen, is it's a money loss. We don't like working with the customer. It's, distracting from other things. And it's like, well, winning an opportunity has, there's some consequences to that. It will, not only maybe make your staff not want to work with the customers, so there's staff satisfaction and emotions behind that you have to consider. Maybe it's a customer that is, is not really nice to work with. We all know those. We all have those customers who are like, it's like every time we're working with them, you feel like they're kind of against you or they're like fighting with you. It's like we're all on the same team here. And so, like I think that's a concern too. And other times, more often than not, is companies will bid outside of their capabilities. They reach for the stars a little bit too far. They reach, like maybe they're stretching their capabilities. And I'm not saying that don't stretch, because I don't think that without taking risk and without kind of stretching your abilities, a company can't grow. But you have to kind of understand and know where you are in your growth cycle. Can you afford to stretch at this point, right? Are you in a sustainable O&M type of, state where you just need to keep the lights on? And that's okay to admit the fact that you just need low-hanging fruit. You need to keep a consistent contract. You got to feed your people. You got to keep them employed. And so there are so many different factors that go behind whether or not you should bid an opportunity. And sometimes, and a lot of times, it's misalignment with where your strategic goals are and what your growth plans are. And you're not being honest with yourself.
Wow. I was just thinking about, I wonder how many times companies don't align what they should do versus what they can do, and looking at, what the customer's goals are or the desired outcome is, and
Mm.
then what the downfall is from that. Because if I stepped into my contracting hat for a second to think, well, if you misalign this and thought that you could do it, and then it
Mm-hmm.
didn't go so great, and you get the contract and you kick off, and then things are not going so well, and you move from, like the honeymoon period to like, this
Yeah.
is not going well. But it's really interesting to think about it like that, because it's like so many things that could be avoided if you really just sat down and thought about,
Do we really want to do this?
and
Yeah.
being honest about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, it's a really great point though to think about, I think maybe that's like the tough conversation to have is, yes, we want to do this, but are we in a place to really be able to do it right now? Or would it be something we want to go
Yeah.
after in 5 years when it comes back up again and we're in a better place to be able to do that? It's just so interesting to think about it
I
like that. Like,
think, yeah. So I love the government perspective of it, right? And from like the industry perspective, is I think it's really difficult sometimes to say no. I think it's really difficult sometimes to kind of go up against the executives. And then there's like this infighting and disconnect sometimes too at the C-suite level. Your BD guy and your capture guy says one thing, your executive,
mm,
your CEO says another thing. Who are you going to listen to? Which way you're going to go? Obviously, the CEO is, the founder sometimes, the owner, the president, whatever it is, they kind of trump. And so I really kind of challenge the C-suites to kind of take a step back and be like, listen, you hired all of these chief growth strategists, chief strategic officers, your BD people, whoever it is that is responsible for your business growth of your company, and trust that they are going to make the right decisions so long as you've given them a strategic mission and goals for what they want, how you want them to, what you want them to pursue.
Mm.
And so it's that second step back and think strategically, have I given a clear and good vision for our company of where and how I want this company to grow? And a lot of times they haven't. You just kind of do things that kind of fall on your lap. You kind of start services or, take on contracts or kind of present it to you. And then at the end of the day, you've got this Frankenstein type of past performance, repository, like you've done work here, you've done work there. And so I couldn't tell you how many conversations I have from a discovery call of when I ask, what's in your pipeline? Who are your customers? And what are your capabilities? And every single time there's always, well, we do, but we really want to, or we're in the process of changing. And so, like, kudos to those who have finally recognized, yes, you need to take a pause, you need to take a breath, maybe realign yourself. And what I'm seeing in industry now, and I think this kind of goes to like one of the points that I think we were going to discuss later is, one of the things that I always want to, impart on industry. And I apologize if I'm skipping, like
No, you're
ahead of you
fine.
here a little
Oh,
bit,
good. Okay.
but it really kind of like at the end of the day, my mantra this year is niche until it hurts. And there's a book out there called Niche Down that is on my desk. I have to read it or whatever, but that's my mantra this year. And I think this is something that all companies, everybody, personally, professionally, needs to kind of think about is that we have become a society where there's a whole field of generalist. There's a lot of people who can do everything. You want to do everything. You think that that's a great thing that you can multitask, that you can, like be all to everyone. You're not doing yourselves any favor by doing that. And so there is this need, this desire right now in industry for people and for organizations to really be like very niche in what they do. Go back to your roots. What do you do well? What do you want to do? Because if you do more of that, I feel that, it's one of those things where, like, if you put on the universe what you want, the universe is always going to give you, back tenfold what you need. Is that, you'll get more of those opportunities that you really do want, that are better aligned if you just go back and think about what is your niche, and like how should you be more specialized and how should you be more focused on what you do. So focus this year, um, and not get distracted by like all the shiny bells and whistles, because 2024 is the year of shiny bells and whistles.
I think that's so great. And honestly, that's a really great answer to that question that I was going to ask you. And I wholeheartedly agree. If you say that you can do everything, then like how well can you do everything? And if I'm looking at you as a potential vendor, and you're telling me you can do X, Y, and Z, well, I really need you to be able to do this. So I don't care about the other stuff. Like how well can you do this piece? So if
Right.
there's something very specified that I'm looking for, I want you to be able to tell me, yep, we can do that. We've done it here. We've done it here. This is what we're working on. And I mean, I think it's a trap that companies fall into, thinking that they need to be able to do multiple things to be able to gain, revenue and win contracts.
Yeah.
And you don't have
Do
to.
this really well.
Yeah.
Exactly. Do this really well. Customers
Hmm.
will see, and like at least get your foot in the door and be like, they see that you can do all these other things too, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so it's one of those, like, we're in such a mad rush to be everything to everyone. It's like, I don't need a Cheesecake Factory menu, right? Like, I just need, like, just give me like one of those special, restaurant week type of menus.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and so, yeah, so I think, like the bottom line is, like in government contracting, I don't think like success isn't just about winning bids. And trust me, hashtag winning is like I use it all the time. Like I have t-shirts that are being made that says "We win SHIT," because that's what one of my customers say. It's like, oh, do you know Intellect? Do you know Ton? And I was like, no, who is she? She's like, well, she wins. And I was like, oh my God, I gotta like, put that on everything. But yeah, like, yes, I joke, but success is not all just about winning bids. It's about winning the right bids, right?
Mm.
There's nothing worse than winning a bid and being like, oh crap, I won this. And like, now what? Now I gotta, like you said, now I gotta perform. Now you're like at kickoff and you're like, wait a second, that's not what I agreed to. That's not what you proposed, and this is not what I want.
Right.
So, save yourself the embarrassment and potentially bad CPARs and, later. So
I think that's a mic drop moment right there. So that's probably some of the best advice I've heard in a while. So if you're listening to this and you're new to the government contracting industry, or maybe you're looking at, a pivot and, making a restructuring of your business, just listen and follow that advice, because I think that'll save you a lot of heartache down the long run. But my last question for you is if our listeners want to get in touch with you, what would be the best way to do that?
I would say LinkedIn. I am shamelessly on LinkedIn, and I am a LinkedIn snob. So it's really kind of I put it out there. I make no apologies about it. Here's the thing. You get so many requests on LinkedIn that are AI bots and, like I don't need any more health insurance or, whatever it is, or, I hate those. So if you connect with me on LinkedIn, there's a whole thing there where it's like, add a note, right? Please add a note saying you heard me on this podcast, or I saw this post, or, whatever. Make it personal. Again, it's appealing to, like me personally. Otherwise, I may delete you, or I may ignore you, or I may sit on it for a while. And so I figure if they need to get a hold of me bad enough, they'll message me. But, my capability statements on there, I'm fully transparent on there. I'm always kind of posting about, news and updates. I've got my own podcast too. So this is a great, like where
Mhm.
you need to be on my podcast next, which is
I do.
fantastic.
I do.
Um, and so yeah, so my podcast is Ton's Two Cents because hey, I'm always like Ton's Two Cents. It's like it's very unfiltered strategies for real world success, which is our tag. And so that's our brand is very strategic perspectives on GovCon. And so yeah, LinkedIn. If you don't hear from me from LinkedIn in a couple of days, you need to go send out someone and like try to find me in the Woodlands, Texas, because something very, very bad happened to me, or I got kidnapped or something.
All right. Well, I'll make sure to link Tan's LinkedIn information as well as the podcast, because I'm always very excited to collaborate with other podcasts, especially in this industry and this specific topic. So, if there's anything that you heard us talk about today that you have more questions about, a specific question for Tan or for me, please email me at breakingthestandard@gmail.com, and make sure to go follow me on LinkedIn and listen to the show on Apple and Spotify. Until next time, bye.